All right. Well, I am thrilled to be here at the annual gathering of the Utah Lake Nerds. And I am proud of that identity for myself. So I'm glad to be here with all of you for this wonderful time to talk about Utah Lake in lots of unique and diverse ways. So I'm Teri Harmen. I'm the Director of Public Outreach for Conserve Utah Valley, but I'm also a writer and a photographer, and I'm currently a graduate student in the Environmental Humanities program at the University of Utah. So I'm doing a lot of different things, but what I want to talk about today is something that has come up quite a bit because this is a big deal for Utah Lake. So what I've been doing as part of my research is an actual discourse analysis. So this is a fancy environmental communication term that just means, kind of that data nerd thing where you're looking at what people are actually saying, because we all know what people say about Utah Lake. We hear it all the time. But this is a concerted effort to really look at what the public offers back about Utah Lake. And something really helpful happened where the ULA launched this incredible media campaign right when I needed to do this research. So Luke, thank you for that. That was very helpful. But so this campaign came out, right? The My Lake campaign. There's been a lot of media, social media, journalism around this campaign. And what I look at are the public comments. So if you'll notice on this KSL article down at the bottom of the screen, there are 70 public comments. So this is an opportunity to see in action. Here's our counter discourse. Here's the narrative we hope people know about Utah Lake and how they react to it, right? So, pulling direct quotes from these. Regardless of what you think or say, Utah Lake is nothing but a sewer, and that's all it will ever be. A few bales of moldy hay and the algal bloom is gone. Has anyone tried that? Doesn't that sound like it will work for our gigantic lake? I would like to see a video of him drinking a glass of Utah Lake water. Then I might start believing the propaganda. It's not an opinion that Utah Lake is filthy, shallow, dangerous, and has been trashed by decades of industrial waste. Those are facts. Another way to look at this, Salt Lake Tribune, for their article, Is Utah Lake Gross? Interesting headline. But this was the Instagram post that they put up. There were 100 comments on this post. And that makes math really easy for a qualitative person like me and not a quantitative scientist. But that's 69 people reproduced the negative narrative of Utah Lake with similar comments that I just shared. Only 8 people offered up a positive counter discourse to the lake. Only 8. The other 23 are just fighting amongst themselves, so we don't care about them. Here are some of the trends, and some of these are obvious. Some of these we all know because we participate in the community. Others are a little bit interesting. So confusion. There's a lot of confusion about Utah Lake, ecologically, historically, recreational. People aren't really sure what's happening, right? And there's a lot of outdated and incorrect information that gets shared over and over and over. This one was interesting to me. There's a serious mistrust of the sources. And so these are sources like, I'm sorry, Luke, the ULA, connected to the government. Any organization connected to the government, people are skeptical and they don't really want to listen. So that's kind of that mistrust. It's an important piece of data to understand. And then the big one here, this negative discourse is beloved, right? This is part of our place identity in Utah Valley. This is part of who we see ourselves at, being able to shit on Utah Lake over and over and over. It's a thing. I know you know this. And so that's how entangled it is. If this is part of who we are, how do we change identity? And then A lot of you are scientists in this room, so you know the knowledge deficit model, where people are really resistant to science and data, right? And it's not because they don't know or they're not intelligent enough to understand. It's because they already have this collection of information and the science doesn't get through, right? We see this with climate change. It's the most obvious example where we have decades of scientific data and studies, and it's so obvious to the science, but there are still huge groups of climate denial, right? So, what do we do? Because this feels like this. Yeah? That's a carp spawn. They creep the hell out of me when I stand there and take these videos, but it's worth it. And the way I see this is rhetorical and cultural turbidity. Yeah? There's so much happening that it's really hard to see Utah Lake clearly. So how do we clear perceptual waters of Utah Lake? And to me, shared rhetoric must be attended to with as much care as water quality and wetland protection. This is about hauling in the humanities. We have an incredible team of scientists. Y'all do amazing work. Where are the storytellers? Where is the art? Where are the encounters that break through these issues, those data trends in the narrative? We need different kinds of encounters for people to bring them back to our center. If we want people to say something different, that's called a counter discourse. And it's not about silencing an old narrative. That negative narrative will always be a part of the history and the culture of Utah Lake. So it's not about erasing, it's about offering something new. It's about opening up the possibilities. Because if Utah Lake is only gross and useless, then it's nothing else. So what if we get people to say, Utah Lake is one of the most successful restoration efforts Utah has ever done. Utah Lake is so much fun, and there's so much to do. Walk, boat, bikes, fish, see wildlife. Utah Lake is the center of all life in the valley, human and more than human. We all need it. And one I want to start a petition for, the June sucker should be the state fish. Who's on board with that? Start a petition. So this is the hope, right? This is the narrative that we all know. But how do we make that narrative spread? How do we get more and more out? Because we've all talked about how difficult this is. Well, I'm a humanities person. So for me, this is about stories, art, and encounters. Why? Well, these things engage emotion. And the human person, the body and the brain, takes everything in emotionally first. Our logic comes later. That's why science gets hard. Science communication gets hard because you need an emotional engagement. And stories are one of the best ways we do that. It encourages embodiment. So how do we get people to the lake? How do we put bodies in space and show them for themselves? That's super powerful. This also gently shifts perspective, so it's allowed to take time. We know that narrative is stubborn, so breaking it down and opening it up is not going to happen quickly, right? This takes time. It opens up new memories, so people have new experiences with Utah Lake that start replacing some of the old narrative. And an interesting one here, it allows for contradictions, confluences. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, Utah Lake is many, many things. And sometimes those are contradictory, and that's okay. We should embrace those contradictions. And where everything entangles and meets, that's where things get interesting. It's all about the messy. So some of the ways this is happening, personally, I'm a writer and a photographer, so I do a lot of creative nonfiction. That is my graduate project instead of a thesis because humanities are flexible like that. It's amazing. I get to write creative nonfiction for my thesis. So that's something I'm doing actively. This is one piece that was recently published with Edge of Books magazine about the carp. Just a little bit of a counter discourse for the carp. But one of the coolest things I've been involved in is a recent art exhibit. So I co-curated with the UVU Museum of Art, Healing Waters, Restoring Our Relationship with Utah Lake. And this was fucking awesome. And I'm going to let the director of the museum tell you all about it. Emily?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to share this project. I was relatively new to Utah when the project was presented to us. And so I was trusting a lot of community insight into different environmental issues that surround the lake and that. As a museum director, I was interested in engaging both the campus community and our local community. It's something that all academic museums strive for, is really serving both entities. And so when we were presented by a few community members with the topic of a Utah Lake exhibition, it felt like an appropriate fit for our museum. For those who aren't familiar, we've been open now for just about 2 years in our space at Lakemount Manor in Orem. But it felt like an appropriate fit given the timeliness of recent events with the lake, the impact it has directly on the local community, the expertise and research that's been conducted by UVU faculty, and the fact that we have an amazing view from our second floor over the lake. Some of you are agreeing. We approached the exhibition with an interdisciplinary practice in mind, wanting to engage the arts, the humanities, and the sciences in this project. It's enabled us to reach a larger audience and appeal to folks who might not typically visit art museums or be familiar with the issues surrounding the lake. Teri Harmen graciously served as our content specialist and co-curator of the exhibition, and we tackled the planning for the exhibition in a few different ways. We wanted to engage as many artists, community members, and local organizations as possible. We chose to announce an open call for art to the general public, explored individual artists with larger bodies of work or special project proposals focused on the lake, and explored partnerships through local organizations and peer institutions, such as the Utah Lake Authority, Conserve Utah Valley, and the BYU Museum of Peoples and Cultures. We developed a committee made up of UVU faculty, community members, and museum staff to review the open call submissions. Ultimately, we selected 50 artists whose work represented a range of artistic media, subject matter, perspectives, and artistic experience. We ended up accepting approximately 1/3 of the artwork that was submitted. While the vast majority of artists have direct ties to Utah Valley and understanding or experience with the lake, the exhibiting artists range in experience from current students, alumni, faculty from Utah institutions, and even community members who explored an art project specifically for the show. The artwork from the open call spanned 5 gallery spaces and was organized by curatorial topics. Teri provided a lovely narration visitors could follow from room to room. Art was organized around human interactions with the lake, some of which are seen here by one of our faculty members, Travis Level. Companions, which encompass plants and wildlife that live off the lake, landscapes, the surrounding areas from the mountains to the watershed that feeds and benefits from the lake waters, and possibilities, a look at how our identity as individuals and community are formed by the lake and what we could do to ensure its health into the future. These are additional examples of some of the artwork you'll find or have found in the open call portion of the exhibition, to give you a sense of the variety. You may recognize some local names. We also tapped a few artists for solo projects as part of the exhibition. One of these, Downey Doxy Marshall's painting series focusing on surface waters and the waterways that feed the lake. This display provided an intimate and rather peaceful or meditative look at nature, offering a degree of solace and reflection for our visitors. Walking through the gallery, one felt as though they were walking along the water, taking in the colors and details of nearby plant life and the movement and resulting ripples of the water. Her display provided an aesthetic appeal for many. At the opposite end of the hall, we displayed the work of UVU Art and Design faculty member and accomplished artist Shirin Abedinarad. Shirin is originally from Iran, where her regional landscape was similar to that of ours here, so much so that her local lake growing up has been considered a sister lake of the Great Salt Lake. After relocating to Utah, she found a sense of familiarity, nostalgia, and peace engaging with Utah Lake and the Great Salt Lake. Her project, Rooted Resonance, is dedicated to finding grounding in the earth and establishing a relationship with the landscape one calls their home. As a fiber artist, she needle-felted wool into the sands of the Utah Lake shoreline, metaphorically embedding herself into her surroundings. John Forsyth had a few sculptural pieces made of natural materials sourced from the Utah Lake landscape. He proposed to museum staff a large site-specific installation made of reeds washed ashore by the lake. His work welcomed visitors at our opening reception in May and served as a labyrinth for folks to follow to contemplate Utah Lake and folks' interactions with it over time. You could see a few kids enjoying them out there. We wanted to also provide a voice for community members in addition to the exhibiting artists, and created a community memories wall where folks could submit personal art, photos, and written memories showing how they engage with the lake. Museum visitors who may not experience the lake regularly were able to see how others engaged with it, and then those who were already familiar had the opportunity to share their love for it, detailing meaningful time spent with family and friends, or the quiet alone time they spent walking the shores, painting, fishing, and the like. Across from the Community Memories wall, we showcased artifacts on loan from the BYU Museum of Peoples and Cultures, as well as historical photos of folks enjoying Utah Lake decades ago, serving as collective memory over time. These contributions helped remind our visitors that the lake has been a staple in our community for many lifetimes. Down the hall, we also shared scientific reports and information that lay people could appreciate and understand should they want to dig deeper into the ecology and environmental challenges affecting the lake. Here we were able to showcase the efforts of the Utah Lake Authority, the Tracy Aviary, Conserve Utah Valley, Grow the Flow, and many more. Visitors also understood how they might be able to support efforts involving the lake and its preservation. The exhibition concluded in the museum's sunroom, which is the former nursery on the second floor, which overlooks the Utah Lake. Here we displayed artwork and writings submitted to by the public to the joint project by Utah Humanities and Save the Great Salt Lake. Their project, This Watershed Moment, Envisioning Place-Based Futures, asked the public to share how they imagine the future of Utah's watershed 150 years from now. While works submitted in 2024 were selected for the former display of the room, visitors could leave their own thoughts in a dedicated journal while enjoying the view of the lake in the distance. To supplement the exhibition, we provided a robust series of public programs, many of which took place over the summertime as ways to engage families, most specifically, as they have more downtime out of the school year. And so we could reach a broad range of audience members, ages, and interests. So you can see some of the programs we put together and a few select photos, everything from panels about the science, readings of literature related to the lake, and we offered 2 on-site activities, both of which were filled. The plein air workshop taught by one of the exhibiting artists, Chantel Clements, and a forest bathing session on the North Shore. I will share that for those of you who missed it, I'm sorry that you did, but we will have a virtual exhibit that we'll be displaying in the next week or so. So you'll be able to see all the works up close. We're still gathering the content on the back end, so you can see the videos and all that were involved. But this is kind of a reflection of some of the pieces that people took away in experiencing the show that was up for about 4 months long. We had 6,679 visits to the exhibition directly and to the public programs. Some of those folks would be repeat visitors, and many were recorded as coming back with family and friends who weren't with them the first time. So from a museum standpoint, we feel the exhibition was successful in what we were trying to do. I would like to say Teri felt the same way. And it's been great for our community. People feel more engaged, connected to the lake as a central part of not only the environment, but our social connections as well. And so I hope others of you will consider hosting projects of this kind in support of the sciences.